Well, hi everybody. My name is Tony Grillo. Welcome to my channel, Wisconsin Hugs. I am right now parked at a truck stop in Germantown, of all places. Germantown, Wisconsin, at the BP. And there's DJ. Hopefully you can see him. We just got done with our walk, and so I thought I'd make a quick video. And if you watched like a bunch of my stuff, you know that I'm a big time Star Trek fan. I started watching the show back when I was a really young kid, maybe like I don't know, third, fourth grade. I was watching the reruns. At that time, I had kind of really big ears, which I kind of still do, but back then, when I was a little kid, they were really big and they were kind of pointy. And when I saw Spock for the first time, I almost thought maybe I'm part Vulcan. So I was a huge fan of Star Trek. I loved the shows. I remember I even had a Spock doll or action figure, and I remember back when I was a kid playing Star Trek with my toys and creating my own stories as a little kid, and then my own adventures with Kirk and McCoy and Spock and Uhura and Sulu and Chekhov. And God, am I missing somebody? Scotty, I just love that show. And then Next Generation came out, and I loved that show. And if you've looked at any of my past videos, I did a series of 10 videos. I called them spoof videos on Star Trek, and I called it Star Trek Football. And I thought it was an original idea that I'd come up with and nobody else had ever done. And what I did is I took my two loves and I put them together, football and Star Trek. And so what I had was Picard being a quarterback of Team Enterprise, and the team in Enterprise, instead of flying, they flew around on their ship. It was more like a team bus that went from planet to planet playing their games, and they had their adventures along the way while they were playing their games. And I turned the crew into a football team. And so had a lot of fun doing that. And I remember when I was going through season 1, a lot of what I did was I looked at the plots, of the summary plots of all the shows, of all the episodes, and of season 1. And these shows are 30 years old. I mean, the show came out, I believe, in 87. And so you're talking 13 years there, and now it's 23. So, you're talking almost, 36 years ago that, and so when Picard was flying around, I was a senior in high school, and I wasn't really into Picard at that time because I felt I'd be cheating on Kirk if I started liking Picard, and I read later that a lot of people felt the same way, when they didn't want to watch Picard because they felt like they were cheating on Kirk, and I had honestly felt that way. I'm not gonna like Picard because he's not Kirk, and I would be unfaithful to Kirk, but then Picard was so good in Star Trek, and that whole crew was so lovable and so awesome that eventually they won your hearts. And then story writing, like Michael Bergman, after he took over for Gene Roddenberry, he really put together a great crew of people came up with great writers, and the stories got really good. Instead of having an alien flavor of the week, they started concentrating on stories about the characters that lived in that awesome world of Star Trek, and they developed the stories from within. And so we really got to experience each character's growth, the development of their character and the growth of their character. And we got to see that. We got to see Worf, with his kid, and we got to see that was pretty awesome. And we got to see, Data evolve, and we found out Data had a evil twin named Lore, and so and Picard had a family. We found out, that we didn't know anything about his older brother, and so, and Counselor Troy had a mom who was just awesome. And so, anyways, I didn't want this video to get too long, but I had after I did the spoof videos, or the football videos, I realized how much I really missed Picard and the Next Generation crew. And so I decided to plop some money down, and I got a subscription on my phone. I subscribed to Paramount, and I've been hearing awful reviews about Picard, and so I was kind of hesitant about watching the show because of the reviews. But then I decided, heck with it. I want to see the show. I want to see I want to see what's going on. I did finish season 1. Now I'm starting season 2. I got to tell you, I loved it. I don't know why. I can understand why some people didn't like season 1, because it's a little, they created a conflict, and then they kind of seemed like they oversimplified the ending a little bit. But it's a first season, guys, and first seasons are really hard to do. And I think not only that, but at that time they were going with a story idea, and I think that was at the urging of Patrick Stewart, where they were trying to come up with something. He didn't want anything to do with Starfleet, and he didn't want anybody from the old crew on the show, and so the writers were kind of stuck. They had to come up with some kind of story idea, and I thought they did a pretty good job. I thought the season was really interesting. Now, I'm going to warn you here, there will be spoilers. So if you have not seen Picard season 1, then you should not watch this video. So I'll give you some warning right now. Basically, I'm just going to flash some pictures up, and I'm going to do some talking. Whatever comes out of my head, I'm just going to, and that's how I'm going to do the review. Okay, so before we jump into this wonderful character, I'm going to try to learn everybody's names as I go along here, and as I get more and more involved with the show, and I start doing background research and start finding little nuggets here and there about the show, I thought I would just real briefly try to explain everything that was going on in season 1, which I felt was actually really, really good writing. And I really enjoyed it, and I thought everything that was awesome about the show. I loved all the characters that they brought in there, and I liked the storytelling. But anyways, we find out that in a rather angry, contentious interview that Picard is no longer in Starfleet, and basically he was part of a rescue mission trying to help the Romulans evacuate Romulus, and during the time where Romulus's sun had exploded before the sun went nova, and so Picard was trying to move everybody, trying to mount this rescue mission, and basically at that time, Starfleet was strapped for resources and ships and personnel and everything else, and they didn't want to help Picard. They didn't want to give him the help because, first of all, they were Romulans, and Romulans hated the Federation, and the Federation hated Romulans. But Picard felt that in order to, begin peace, with the Romulans, they needed to help them, and he was just trying to be human and help people in need of help. And so he basically tried to lead a campaign, tried to get as many people out of there as he could. And then we find out that there was a bunch of Siths that had been manufactured. And a bunch of them were working on Mars. And apparently the Siths revolted. They were like Data. They were androids. And they revolted and led a rebellion. And they basically blew up the whole Mars base station. And everybody there perished. It was an act of terrorism. And so since we're now, from then on, we're outlawed. And basically hunted. And so since, kind of like Blade Runner, since we're in danger of, they were being hunted and exterminated. And so this young lady right here is a Sith. Apparently she was created with apparently I don't know what they call it, but she has some of Data's neurons, some of his programming has been put inside of her, and she is an android, fully functional android. She doesn't even know she's an android, and she is attacked by Romulans when she's fooling around with her boyfriend in her apartment. All of a sudden she gets attacked, and then something kicked in her programming, and she just lashed out and killed everybody in the room. And then she had some kind of something in her head, like flashed Picard's face. And so she's like, I have to find Picard. And that's what she goes and does. She finds him at the vineyard, and Picard's like, wait a minute, I know you. Data painted a picture of you years ago. And he called you his daughter. In the picture, it was called, the painting that he painted was my daughter. And so all of a sudden they're by Starfleet headquarters, and then more Romulans show up, and basically there's a big fight, and she winds up getting killed. Okay. And now Picard is trying to figure out what the heck's going on here. So he goes to Starfleet and tells them what is just happening here. But Starfleet is kind of ticked off at Picard because of his interview and because of the things he said about Starfleet. He didn't talk good about Starfleet. He was upset Starfleet for turning their back on the Romulans. And Starfleet was kind of, hurt by what he had said. And they felt, hey, we were strapped. We couldn't help them because we were trying to help other people as well, and we couldn't be everywhere at once. We couldn't mount the sort of rescue campaign that you wanted us to mount. We just didn't have the resources. We had a limited amount of ships, and so you really badmouthed us, and made us look bad in public. And so there's a lot of animosity between him and Starfleet. Not only that, but he mentions that she's a Sith, and Siths are outlawed. They cannot live in the Federation anymore, and so they really don't want to mess with this. So Picard's like, well, then I'll have to go get my own crew, and he mounts an investigation. So Picard is trying to figure out the mystery of this young lady, and he bumps into this person here, Dr. Agnes Jurati, and she is also she does a lot of work in that field, creating androids, and She was worked with a guy named Bruce Maddox, I believe was his name, and they were quite close. We find out later her and Maddox were lovers, and she had told Picard that if Maddox, after the law went into effect, where synths were outlawed, he took off, and if he would have kept on doing his work, then he normally created two androids. And so Picard's thinking that there's a twin. And Data had two daughters. These two androids were created using Data's matrix and Data's neurons and Data's positronic parts of his positronic brain. Some of his programming went into those two androids, into his two daughters. He wanted to save. He felt that the other girl would be in danger because whoever killed the one twin, he found out it was Romulans. It was a group called the Tal Shiar. The Tal Shiar were out and they were going to kill the other one as well. Now, the Tal Shiar had a belief that their mission in life was to stop the Armageddon, and they wanted to stop the destroyer. They had a belief, a myth, like a religious belief, like Christians believe in Armageddon. They also had an Armageddon belief. They believed that the destroyer was an android, and that the android would summon a higher power that would come into the universe and destroy all of humanity and everybody. And humanity meaning everybody that wasn't a synth would be destroyed. So that would be Romulans, Vulcans, Ferengi, Klingons, and Terrans, which is the word for humans. So Picard contacts this lady. Apparently they flew together. She was like his right-hand man. They flew on a lot of missions together. They were close. And then when Picard was basically booted from Starfleet, he wasn't really booted. He gave him a threat. He said, "We either do what I want to do or I resign." And they said, "Okay, give us your resignation." And then when he resigned, because they called his bluff, and he had to resign or he'd be a liar, and then his words wouldn't mean anything. So he resigned, and this lady kind of she rose up in the ranks because she had Picard's backing, and now with Picard not in Starfleet anymore, she was let go as well. But she knows people outside of Starfleet that are that might be able to help Picard, because Picard wants to hop into a ship again. He wants to leave the Vineyard. He wants to go on an adventure. He wants to try to find this other android daughter of Data, and he wants to try to save her. And so she hooks him up with a buddy of hers who has his own ship. And this is the guy right here. I don't know his name, but I gotta tell you something. His character's name is Rios. He's known as Captain Rios. He is Latino. He is one of the greatest characters, that new additions to Star Trek that I've ever seen. I love this guy. He is so talented as an actor, and he really shows his range, especially on the ship, because the ship uses holographic images of him, but they use different types of personalities of him. So on his ship, there's like 10 different holograms of him. One's like a ship's counselor, one hologram is a ship's doctor, and they all look like him, but they all dress different, and they all have different personalities. He also does a Scottish accent, and you can probably guess what that one is. That is the engineer. And so you see this Latino guy talking with a Scottish accent, And the guy he is so talented and so hilarious. And he is really, I just love this guy. I love his character. And he has this ship. Apparently he used to be in Starfleet, and apparently he knows the Admiral pretty well. He served as a captain on a ship, and I cannot remember how he lost his command. I cannot remember what had happened. But somehow or another, he's not Starfleet anymore. Excuse me. And he's not crying about it. He's just moving on. And so he's got his own ship, and he needs to make money, and so he flies people around. And so Picard's a customer. And so they take Picard where he needs to go. So along the way, I don't want to get into too much details, but they bump into this awesome character, 7 of 9, and I really love 7 of 9. I believe her name is Jerry Ryan, I want to say. She is so good in this show. She is awesome. I love her. Just love her. I'm so glad they brought her into the show, because they kind of bridge the gap between, she was on Voyager, and they bridge Voyager with Enterprise, with Picard, and they bring the two together. Plus, she has this presence out with her, and she just, she can stand as an equal next to Picard. That's just how good she is. And there's skirmishes going on, and she finds herself, going back and forth between Picard and whatever's going on. Apparently, she works as a kind of like a vigilante in outer space. There's a region of space out there where there is no law, there is no police, and she's running around, going after the bad guys. And she's developed quite a reputation as one to be feared in that sector of space. She's grown very powerful. And also another thing is that these Borg people that were saved, and then they're out running around, they're being hunted as well, because apparently they still have Borg implants within their body, and those Borg implants are very valuable, and there's a black market for those, anything that's Borg that was in a body. And so she's worth a lot of money on the market as being butchered for parts. So there's people out there after her. And unfortunately, somebody did go after her. We found out she had rescued some Borg kids on Voyager. And one of the kids' name was Ichabod. And Ichabod was just this wonderful, delightful young man who shed his Borg, identity. He went into Starfleet, became a Starfleet officer. He was doing great. And then apparently he got kidnapped or attacked or whatever, taken hostage by this group of terrorists or whatever. They're black market sellers, and they butchered him and took his parts. I mean, they didn't even use anesthetic. There was one horrible part in there where the Ichabod gets his eye removed from his body, and he's not even offered anesthesia. Just a horrific scene, and they kill him. And then they take his body for parts. Well, Borg 7 of 9, they work out some kind of deal with the terrorist. Picard gets his information that he needs, where to find the twin, Data, the Data's daughter's twin, and then she beams away. But then when she's on board Picard's ship, she says, "I'd like to," he's like, "Well, thank you for helping us out. What can we do for you?" He goes, "Well, before I go back to my ship, I sure could use a couple plasma rifles right over there." He's like, "Sure, grab whatever you need," and so she grabs the 2 plasma rifles and beams off the ship. And we think she's like going back to her ship or whatever. I think her ship got destroyed. So we're not exactly sure where she's beaming away, but I think Picard probably figured it out, because she just surprisingly beamed, and it's like, wait a minute, she does not have a ship to go to because her ship got destroyed. So even he must have figured it out. She went back to the planet, and she basically, there's a scene there where she wipes out all the terrorists, and it's pretty cool. She kills them all. No mercy whatsoever. awesome scene. Great job, writers. Great job, 7 of 9. You were awesome. Then along the way to where this Borg cube is sitting, that's where Data's twin is. It's a Borg cube that's held by the Romulans. It's a non-functioning, non-working Borg cube, and apparently there's a peace treaty that's set up there. So between everybody, the Federation and the Romulans, and so you find a bunch of different people working there at this Borg cube. They're doing research, trying to figure out how the cube works, and they're also trying to save the people that are on the ship and trying to make them not Borg anymore. And so, anyways, they decide to stop at this one planet because Picard wants to make peace with the Romulans that he put there on the planet. Apparently, he took a group of Romulans and he took them to this one planet, and he made promises to them that he couldn't keep because Starfleet turned their backs on them and they were on their own. And this young boy, when he was a young kid, he was very much in love with Picard, even though Picard supposedly is not very good with kids. You know, there was even a joke about that. And that's what I like about what the writers did. The writers used stuff from the old show so that, because, you know, us as fans, we pick up on that. You know, we remember how Picard didn't really like having kids around on the ship. And he was in a ship that had families, and there were kids on the ship. And you know, and so he had to deal with these kids. And, you know, we even saw one little girl who, that was on Voyager. She was awesome on Voyager. That little girl that she was trying to pretend to be 7 of 9. But anyways, this kid, he's now grown up, and he is a very skilled warrior. He was trained under the women priests of this Romulan satellite planet. And what's really interesting about the show is, too, there's a lot of strong women in this show, and it's almost like every single woman here is like a man, almost to that point. I don't have a problem with that because, you know what? I think they're great characters, and I enjoy watching them. I enjoy, just don't make the men weak. And I think they did that. You know, Picard is not a wimp. Rios isn't a wimp. And in fact, Rios is like, he's kind of sleeping around with several of the women, you know. It's kind of funny, like him and that Dr. Girardi get it on, you know. And so, you know, there's, you know, the men there aren't weak either, which was really nice. It was nice to see that. And also, so he makes his peace with this kid, and he asks him for help because he knows the kid's a fierce warrior. And he needs somebody that can fight, you know, because he might get into situations that he's an old, feeble man and he's about ready to fall apart. His mind isn't working like it should be, and he's about ready to die. And so he realizes he needs help, and he needs a young man to kind of be his bodyguard, and that's what this kid does. And this kid can fight. My God, can he fight? And what's really great about this show is they don't lay back on the blood and guts. When this guy goes to task with his sword, you know, he's like chopping people in half. He's like cutting heads off. He's cutting limbs off. He's sticking his sword through their bodies, through their hearts, wherever. He's going crazy. Blood's flying. Green blood's flying everywhere. This guy, I mean, they didn't hold back on the fight scenes, and I think that's what makes this show really good. The writers, that was awesome. That's kind of stuff I like to see. You know, I want really good fight scenes, you know, and if they are a little bit bloody, that's fine, as long as they correspond with a good story. You know, I just don't want to see a bunch of blood and guts and no story going with it. You know, it has to be integral to the story. You know, that's why Game of Thrones was so fun to watch. You know, those death scenes were crucial to telling the story. And then we get towards the latter part of the season, and This is when the writers realize, we need to bring back the old characters because the fans want it. The fans are demanding that they want to see the old characters. And they brought back Will Riker. And I was so happy to see him. I was cheering, clapping. Sorry there. When Counselor Troy showed up, I got so excited. I was cheering again to see that they were married and they were happy. And apparently we found out they had 2 kids. Now, they had a synth son. And I don't know if the daughter they had was also a synth. I'm not entirely sure. But the son, they had a son that was definitely synth. And then what happened is that when the ban on synths went into effect, I guess the girl can't be synth because she would have been hunted down. She has to be regular human. But she sure does act like a robot. Maybe because she grew up around the other kid, the boy, and so she kind of copying the way he acted. I don't know, but anyways, we found out that we never got to meet the kid. Apparently, he had died because what had happened is the synths were outlawed, and that meant their son, who was a android, he's had some trouble with his data. His matrix, his data matrix, his positronic brain, the processing, all that stuff. Something was falling apart in his systems, in his computer systems, and it was against the law to fix it. And so, as a result, he died. The android boy died, and they mourned for their android son's death, which I thought was really good story writing, because it makes you start to care a little bit about the synths. I mean, at first, okay, they led this revolt, and they attacked their humans, and we know Data was really awesome, and we loved Data, but the synths had advanced, and then they organized a terrorist attack, and we're not too sure about the synths, but then we find out that not only did Will Riker and Picard, they loved Data, even Troy loved Data, but then Riker and Troy had an android son, and they loved him as well. And so it paints the synths kind of in a different light, they were loved, and so anyways, we find that out. And Picard's telling him, I'm on this mission. I'm going to be leaving. Thank you for the protection, because he's got protection there. He's still enlisted in Starfleet. We find out that he's on reserves. He is a captain, and I don't know if he's a captain or an admiral, but he is a high-ranking officer, still in Starfleet. He's still on the reserves. And so he can go back into service and a call's notice, or if he decides himself he wants to go back into service, he's automatically reinstated in Starfleet. And so Picard, that's handy for Picard to know, because he may need Riker's assistance. You just never know. He's thinking in his head, I might need Will Riker to come save me. And this Narek guy, Harry Treadway, he has a sister, and these two are spies for the Tal Shiar, and they're trying to kill all synths, and he's actually has this relationship with the twin sister, Data's twin. He's sleeping with her, and he's trying to pump her for information. And basically what he wants to do is he wants the girl to reveal where the location is of the Sith homeworld. Where are they all living? Because there's a rumor out there that there's a planet where these Siths live, and he feels once they find that information, they can go to that planet, destroy it. They destroy all the Siths. They destroy all the androids. And then their mission is done. They will stop Armageddon. And so it's really hard to look at these guys as bad guys, because what they are doing in their mind, they're heroes. They're trying to stop Armageddon. They're trying to save the entire galaxy in their own minds. And yeah, there is one great scene in there where he gets the information he wants, and then he brings her to a room, and he can't just take a phaser and fire at her, because she's worried that her programming will start to kick in, her self-defense mechanism programming, and that she'll go full out, like, RoboCop on him or whatever. She'll become this super ninja, death, like Terminator. She'll go all Terminator on him and kill him. And so he tries to be subtle about it, and he locks this room with a force field or whatever, and then he puts this poisonous gas in there, but it takes the gas. Gas is really slow. And it gave her enough time to smash through the floorboards and escape. And so she's in the Borg cube, and Picard is there because he was granted diplomatic access as a envoy from the Federation. He called in some chips while he was heading to that Borg cube, and he was able to get on board that Borg ship, and he's looking all over for her, and he meets up with Hugh, and he's trying to save her. And these guys, him and his sister, are the Talshir twins. They're fighting him, and so there's this big battle going on, and Hugh gets killed, and 7 of 9 joins in, and there's a big fight there, and then and then Elron, he's involved, and Picard needs some time, and so what they do is they beam Picard and the girl, because Picard's like, come with me if you want to live. So he finds the twin, and she doesn't know what to believe or who to trust, and so she takes off with Picard, and I'm screwing the story up. Then they go meet Will Riker. That's what happens. Then he and her go and they meet Will Riker, and then they move on from there with their plan. Then they go to the synth homeworld. And then finally there's a big battle there, and we get to meet Dr. Noonan's son's son, I think it was. The guy that created Data has a son, and the son is doing the same work as Data. And apparently there's a bunch of Siths that are on this planet, and then there's kind of a little civil war erupting between the Siths, because some of the Siths want to destroy all the humans and all the non-Siths, and they're summoning the destroyer to come. And meanwhile, the Talshir are flying their entire battle cruisers at the planet. And the only goofy thing about the story was these flower things that they had created as a defense mechanism for the planet. Apparently the flower things can fly up into space, and they can swallow up ships and make them crash on the planet. And one of the flowers things swallows up the Borg cube, because 7 of 9 was able to get the Borg cube flying again, and she assimilated herself into the cube, and she flew the ship out of there, and she flew it to the synth homeworld, and then it gets eaten up by the flower, and it falls to the planet, crashes, and so now there's this big fight going on the planet, and you have her, and she finds another twin of hers running around, and that twin is like an evil twin and wants to destroy everybody, and even killed one of her own sisters. And so anyways, it was a lot of fun. That final couple episodes got to be a lot of fun, and eventually what happens is that Picard, he does what he does. He's a negotiator. That was one of the things that Picard always was good at. Picard was first and foremost a diplomat. And there were many times where he talked his way. Kind of like Kirk. Kirk did that too, but he would talk his way out of jams. And that's what he did. And he convinced that Data's daughter to trust in humanity. Trust that there are good people. She said, he was like, don't be a destroyer. Don't be the destroyer. And so at the very last second, we see this thing opening up, this thing ripping in outer space. And we see these giant evil tentacles come flying out. I don't know what they were supposed to do, but apparently that was the destroyer. And the destroyer was trying to come out into the universe and was going to destroy everybody. And she decides to shut off the summoning mechanism, and the vortex that appeared in outer space outside the planet starts to seal up, and whatever was trying to get out winds up being trapped back because the vortex sealed up, and whatever it was that was trying to come out couldn't come out. And she says, okay, Picard, I hope you're right. I hope I could trust you. And then everybody's friends, at the end of the show. And we see that Picard becomes an admiral. And he's back in his Starfleet uniform. Oh, yeah, and I also forgot, too. After that had happened, the Romulans showed up with all their ships, and then Riker showed up in the last second. Riker showed up with a bunch of his ships, and you kind of had like this Mexican standoff, and you knew that if all those ships, it was like we're talking about thousands of ships on both sides, and if they all started firing on each other, everyone was pretty much going to die, and nobody was going to live. And Riker, he means business. He's not afraid to die. Riker made a threat. He said, my ship is far superior than yours. Just give me one reason to kick your Romulan ass. And, I love the lines that they said, too, because there was cussing in the show. They were allowed to do that because it's it's like a Netflix show. So they could cuss, and they could, say things like that. And it really makes the show that much better. In my viewpoints, because that's something that Riker would say, right before a battle would start. And after the destroyer was sealed up in the vortex, the Romulans had no more reason to attack, and so they turned around and they left. They left, and there was no more fighting. The red alert was canceled. And then you had peace again at the end. And I thought it was a great, exciting final episode. And I like the fact that season 1 didn't end on a cliffhanger. Because, I really hate it for season 1. I don't mind cliffhangers on season 2 or season 3. But not on season 1. Season 1, I kind of like to have a definite ending. And I like the way it ended, season 1, because we got to see Picard back in his Starfleet uniform, and he was back in Starfleet as an admiral, and I love seeing Riker as a captain back in his uniform, flying a ship. I think he was captain of the, I don't know what it was. I can't remember which ship he was flying. I don't think it was the Titus, because that was his old ship, but anyways, that was a lot of fun. See, I can't remember if he was the captain of the Stargazer, Picard's old ship, but it's not his old ship. It's a new ship, and it was a really kick-ass ship, no doubt about it. And so, there's a happy ending. And then we get into season 2, and it starts out kind of happy. We find out Rios is back in Starfleet. He's a captain of the Stargazer, I think the same ship that Riker was flying. And then we see Raffi, she's back in Starfleet. doing what she's doing. I don't know exactly what her job was in Starfleet. I think she works side by side with Picard, and he's an admiral, and maybe she's his assistant. I don't know, but anyways, it was a very happy ending. And then in season 2, Q shows up, and you know what? I actually love it. I actually love what's going on in season 2 as well, and I'll make another video about that, about season 2. But it is interesting that, you know, everything ends on a great note, and then guess what? Q pops up. And so what a great way to start out season 2. I can't wait to finish it. I am enjoying season 2. I love it so far. It kind of reminds me, it's reminiscent of you know, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. They got to go back in time, and there was even a part in there on the bus where they were copying Kirk and Spock with the bus. And I don't know if that's the same guy from the Star Trek 4 where he had that radio, that boombox, and it was the same song he was listening to, and they asked him to turn the song off, and he says, "Yeah, sure, I'll turn it off. I'm sorry." And so we know we're on a different timeline because this guy actually apologized and turned, you know, and so something's messed up with the timeline. And so Picard has to go back in time and fix it, kind of like what he did in Star Trek 4 when he had to go bring back a couple whales to the future to save the Earth of the future. So, you know, there's some very reminiscent parts going on there. But I like that because here again, you're drawing upon stuff from the past and bringing it into the normal show. And we as fans love that kind of stuff. We love that nostalgia. We love the continuity. We love it when you bring stuff from the past back into the normal shows. It's great writing. It's great storytelling. And so I'm just having a blast watching season 2, and I can't wait to finish it. So, and I'll do a video on season 2 as well. And so that's all I gotta say. I just had a great time watching season 1. I don't know if anyone will watch my review on this show. I bet all of you have all watched it anyway, and you know it's probably old news. Maybe you don't care about it, but maybe you enjoyed my review. Maybe I brought up some things that you were like, yeah, you know, I did like that part. Or maybe it just makes you laugh hearing me tell you how much I enjoyed it, and maybe you enjoyed it as well. And so we have that in common. And so because I kind of like videos like that where I get to listen to somebody who enjoyed a movie that I enjoyed. I get to hear their input, and I do like that, you know. So anyways, hey everybody, I'm out of here. I gotta go to bed now because I gotta get up early, and me and DJ have to get up early and get back to trucking. So I hope you all have a great night. Wisconsin hugs, and live long and prosper. Now I'll say Wisconsin hugs. Adios, like Rios would say.